You fucked it up, goddamn you. Now get straight on it and help. If you can't help them, help me.
He's a director who has a history of violent outbursts.
Yeah, fuck yourself. Good, why don't you fuck your whole movie?
Have you changed as the person? What's the actual truth of that? About the conflict you had on Three Kings?
I think I've talked about it so much and it's such old news and I hate to even rehash it. But I think, of course I went to him, and of course you try everything you can to try to make it as good as it can. I'm not a tactful or political person, so to my own detriment. So I don't try to go around behind myself and clean up, which is then when things take on a life of their own.
I think also the fact that I've had such a great experience with the man behind me, David O. Russell, and Clint Eastwood and Todd Phillips, and even dating back to J.J. Abrams, people that were willing to let me in on their process and be a part of it, especially David. There's no way I would have been able to make this movie if I hadn't. It was like I went to film school with David O. Russell.
David could pitch me something that sounds horrible. I mean, Joy was a brilliant idea, and I loved him so much for having his heart in this place and for being inspired by this woman's story. He can find a diamond in something that's being so overlooked. People can walk over it every day, and he can stop and go, there's a story here, and peel it back, and that's what I love about him.
That's how it's meant to be, And they'll tell him, nothing better than that. Nothing better than that. He did it. I gotta go. I gotta go.
Born in Manhattan in 1958, David O. Russell has made an indelible mark on the face of cinema with his dark and sometimes dim view of humanity, as exemplified by tragic characters, both real and fictional. With 5 Academy Award and 4 Golden Globe nominations, Russell is widely regarded as an artist, if his 2016 presentation of the Contribution to Cinematic Imagery Award from the Art Directors Guild is any indication. While his work has no shortage of artistic merit, Russell is no snob, and his realistic, everyman characters resonate with audiences and critics alike. Not afraid to take artistic risks, Russell's featured director debut was 1994's Spanking the Monkey, a taut, psychosexual black comedy about a burgeoning adolescent. Made on a shoestring, the movie easily recouped its modest budget, and it's a bit of a cult favorite, though it polarized audiences and critics at the time. Polarization never bothered Russell, and he followed up with 1996 Ben Stiller vehicle Flirting with Disaster, which, like Spanking, he wrote and directed himself. Critics were impressed with the sophomore effort, and it doubled its relatively modest $7 million budget, giving him a reputation as a safe bet. The bet felt so safe that Warner Brothers gave him a whopping $45 million for 1999's Three Kings, a dark and scathing Gulf War adventure film which made back nearly a third of its budget the first weekend alone, opening on a relatively soft weekend, but a few short weeks before notable movies like Fight Club, Boys Don't Cry, and The Insider. Though it took him 5 years to release another feature, 2004's I Heart Huckabees was well worth the wait. Conceived from Russell's attempts to cope with the events of 9/11, Huckabees was reportedly a tense set to work on, and a screaming argument between Russell and film co-star Lily Tomlin went viral. The film failed to make back even half of its budget, and critics remain divided on the film, though it has become a cult classic. The film included numerous perfect comedic performances from erstwhile serious actors, and showcased Russell's ability to play with visuals and immerse the viewer. Taking 6 years off, Russell came back swinging hard in 2010 with The Fighter, a biographical pick about boxer Mickey Ward. The Fighter minted money and garnered 2 Oscar wins and gave Christian Bale an excuse to lose a bunch of weight because he loves to do that for some reason. His follow-up, an adaptation of the Matthew Quick novel The Silver Linings Playbook, netted an Oscar win and introduced him to Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence, a duo who would become frequent collaborators. This included his next film, 2013's American Hustle, the true story of grifter politician Carmine Polito and conman Irving Rosenfeld. Another 9-figure box office return and 2-figure Academy Award nomination film for Russell, he seemed to have found his groove and used some of his gravitas to make one for himself, 2015's Accidental Love, which he directed using his nom de plume Stephen Green. People largely overlooked the quirky, PG-13 Phineas Gage comedy, and the other film he made the same year, Joy, was part of the reason Accidental Love felt like it got overshadowed. Featuring virtuoso performances from Jennifer Lawrence, Bradley Cooper, and Robert De Niro, Joy flew a bit under the radar compared to some other 2015 offerings, but proved Russell can still hang with the best Hollywood has to offer. currently producing a TV series. It'll be fascinating to see what this mercurial but brilliant director comes up with next.
Uncompromising and unrelenting, David O. Russell's vision is going to happen whether you like it or not. I'm your host today for this episode of Director's Cut, Jon Dunning, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Jason Alt.
Hey, everybody.
How's it going? We moved into a new movie theater, as you've seen. Thank you for finding us and tracking us down. But yes, David O. Russell, it kind of feels like a continuation from the last episode that we did with Spike Jonze. Those two are kind of synonymous with each other, and this is kind of the yang to the Spike Jonze yin, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I found Spike Jonze to lack substance a little bit, and I think people tend to ascribe more talent and creativity to him because they liked him. And I feel like O. Russell's the exact opposite. I feel like his talent is undeniable, and so many people hate to work with him because he's so demanding. And, he gets the best out of people, but he's very, very tough. And, a lot of people don't like him, but they have to acknowledge his talent. And I kind of feel like that dynamic between those two directors who are frequent collaborators, kind of parallels our own collaboration.
Absolutely. I think you stated in the last episode that David O. Russell just seemed like everything we joked about it when Tony Walters was joining us on the last episode, that everything just seemed to fall in place for Spike Jonze. It's just like, oh, he's now directing Sonic Youth. Oh, he's doing this, he's doing that. But David O. Russell just has to work so much harder because of his own attitude that he has to overcome. But there's just so much respect that you have to give a creator and an artist that is just like, he is just 100% uncompromising in his vision. And there's a lot of directors out there that's like the antithesis. Like, the antithesis of a David O. Russell, in my opinion, is like a Tim Burton, where they're just like, oh, we're going to hire Tim Burton because he's got a specific style and we want a Tim Burton movie. But he is just so malleable. He's like a canister of Play-Doh, where he would just, any studio notes, hey, we want to do this, we want to do that. And there it goes out the window, all the vision, all the originality. And David O. Russell's just like, no, I'm going to make David O. Russell movies. And that goes all the way back to his first movie with Spanking the Monkey, where I believe he was he got funded to make a movie about like a greeting card person or someone that makes greeting cards, and then he turned in this incestuous crazy black comedy, and the initial people that funded this thing pulled the funding. But that just goes to show you just how much of a unmoving vision that this man has.
Speaking of Spike Jonze, that's basically the plot of adaptation.
Absolutely.
Make a movie about orchids. Yeah, okay.
And I love his upbringing too. I mean, he is he's on the chair of the ghetto filmmakers, I believe, or ghetto film school. He graduated from M.A.R.S, which is it's not nothing. But I mean, he just did it, and he learned with boots on the ground, filming like documentaries where he would get behind these causes and these kind of broke neighborhoods and stuff like that, and then he'd film documentaries. So he kind of was like a Richard Linklater, where he learned how to be a filmmaker by filmmaking.
Well, the two documentaries that he's credited with before his first like official feature, Spanking the Monkey, one was Bingo Inferno, which was basically him making fun of his mother's bingo obsession. And the other one was Hairway to the Stars, which I didn't manage to find to watch. But, there's not a lot that I can find about it online other than that. Both that and Bingo premiered at Sundance. So he was wowing people from very early days. Yeah,
and he definitely has a visual style. He's not overly stylistic just to be stylistic. He uses interesting visual imagery as a storytelling tool when it's appropriate. But man, does this man he's just obsessed with day-to-day Americana. Like he is best at picking, portraying the middle class and showing and like getting right up close and personal with it. You could see all the dirty pores, all the normalcy, and he takes that, the normalcy of just everyday life, and he makes that interesting and cinematic, where everything feels very familiar, but also very alien, because it almost feels like a parody of itself as well.
I think it's because it's a little too real. Something that I noticed when we really spent a lot of time digging down. We got like an extra week or two to work on this episode, and I'm really glad that we got that opportunity, because I got a chance to like write all my notes out, but then I had some time to rewatch some of his movies, and revisiting the films with the stuff I wanted to talk about in mind, I noticed something that I felt a little bit unsettled watching some of his movies, and I think I realized that all of his movies have people arguing on screen.
Yes.
More than once, and you don't see that in a lot of other movies. People argue all the time in real life, especially if they're in, tense situations or these crazy situations that are worth making a movie about. People are going to argue, and he shows so much of people arguing on screen that it seems. It doesn't seem weird enough that you're like, oh, that's a weird thing that happened, because, people arguing is natural and normal. But at the same time, people don't tend to show blemishes the way he does. He's very honest and uncompromising in what he shows on screen. And if that's people screaming at each other, that's real life, as evidenced by the screaming argument he had with Lily Tomlin.
No!
It's never alien, it's always heightened, right? Like everything feels like it's happened in your household before, at least in my household. It's like there's a lot of daddy hitting mommy at the dinner table moments, and you almost like your face feels hot when you watch a lot of these films, especially something like A Silver Linings Playbook, or the whole thing, the whole movie of Spanking the Monkey, you're watching through your fingers, because it's just, you can't believe what you're really seeing. But he puts it in such a way where it's funny, but it's also so realistic, where you could see like this happening at like your neighbors. Like you could see like this family being like a local urban legend or something, and you believe it because he just makes everything feel so authentic. And in a way that's very uncomfortable. Like you said, we're like a lot of other people just get performances out of their actors, where he's just making them non-act, and that's more effective than a Daniel Day-Lewis needing his fucking milkshake.
You know what's funny? I watch a lot of movies, and movies don't ever show somebody taking a dump, right? Like you don't. Unless it's integral to the plot, you don't see someone brushing their teeth or taking a shower. There's so much that happens off screen a lot of the time. And one of those things I think is people sitting down to eat. And he has people around a dinner table in almost all of his movies. Yeah. And there's almost always an argument or something. And I think he describes himself as a voyeuristic director, meaning because it starts in the writing process. The fact that he does the writing and the directing, I think, is very important, because he wants to seem voyeuristic. He wants to force himself to write the characters doing things that everybody knows they do, but you have to see it because it adds authenticity to it. So I think the fact that like people argue and eat dinner and do human stuff in his movies, I think that starts with the writing, and he writes with that in mind and he directs with that in mind. I think that seems remarkable to people, but like until you really think about why it had that effect, you don't really know what he did, because he didn't show you anything odd necessarily. It just, he showed you stuff you don't typically see in a movie.
And to your point, the one movie that does feel the least authentic, that does feel the most Oscar baity, he didn't write, and that's The Fighter. I always feel like that one kind of stood out to me, even though you have some great performances from Melissa Leo and Christian Bale. That one just felt like he was trying to kind of prove something to himself. That was the one that,
that was his I made I Heart Huckabees, I lost $40 million on I Heart Huckabees.
He had 6 years to make The Fighter.
Well, I think there was a movie he tried to make in the interim that didn't get made, but he does a lot of writing. He does a lot of other stuff. He punches up scripts for other people and helps other people with their projects. So he might have been licking his wounds, and he might have just been busy doing other stuff. But yeah, The Fighter seemed kind of like a safe project, but also as safe as it was as a project, he took a lot of risks as a director, because I feel like he really came into his own as a camera pointer.
Sure.
In 2010.
Yeah, and that's fair. Like, I Heart Huckabees, everything was happening around that time, right? 2004, that's when he and Janet Grillo kind of split up, and then he was just in a real bad place, as is well documented on the internet. If you want to, I mean, not just in this video, but you could go. It's very easy to find his run-ins with. If you're fighting with Lily Tomlin, it probably means that you're in a bad place. And not to say that she didn't. I'm not saying that she deserved it or anything, but I'm saying that he wasn't the only one acting like a tyrant. I mean, there is plenty of videos where you could see that she is also being.
If that video had been him fighting with Dustin Hoffman, I would have been like, okay, holy shit.
This guy's a dick. Yeah, because like you hear him fighting with George Clooney in Three Kings, you're like, yeah, you can probably I get that.
But as much as there as many people as there are who say, they all say the same thing, which is life is too short to work with a guy like that. Because Amy Adams said that, which was like like echoing something Clooney had said. Life's too short to make a movie with someone like that. Yeah. There are people who swear by him, you know?
Yes.
He could call Bradley Cooper at 3 a.m. and be like, I'm thinking about a thing. And Cooper's like, I'm in, you know.
Yeah.
Jennifer Lawrence, Robert De Niro.
Yeah. He essentially made Jennifer Lawrence, right?
I think he showed that she was a serious actor. I think it showed that she had chops, because she really acted circles around Amy Adams in American Hustle.
Sure.
And
with a smaller part.
Yeah, and Amy Adams kind of said that she wouldn't work with him again because he like made her cry on the set apparently. And I heard Christian Bale got in his face, which is funny because Christian Bale screamed at a DP very famously. He had his own meltdown.
Sure.
You know, and I don't think Bale's worked with him since. So it's kind of weird that some people swear by him and some people, you know. But whatever, he's polarizing off camera as well as on camera, I guess, you know? Because I thought I Heart Huckabees that's probably in my top 10. Yes. I think that's a perfect movie, but it's so polarizing and like no one gave a shit about it. It's just one of those things. So I think you either really hate David O. Russell or love him. Nobody's kind of met on him, which I think is fine.
Yeah,
personally,
you're in his wheelhouse. Or you're not. Like you said, Bradley Cooper learned. He just accredits him for so much. He says he's quoted by saying he felt like he went to film school with David O. Russell just by being on his films, because he lets people in their process too. And for being such a serious man like David O. Russell, you see just his work ethic, and then you see him in interviews, and he's very dry, a very serious person. But then you go through his filmography, and you could maybe say one or two aren't drama/comedy or something/comedy. All of his films are really funny, and whether that be, I don't think he's intentionally trying to make a joke. But
no, he literally said. The style of writing begins with writing the story from each character's point of view and finding them in all their glory. That means all their humanism. That means what is specific about them. Human, crazy, particular, inspiring, ugly, laughable, but you never try to be funny. If something funny happens, it's because it's just real and honest. So there are funny moments in all of his movies, but I don't think he's like, I'm going to write a comedy. He's just like, I'm just going to have real situations. That the kind of stuff that like, oh, that happened and it'll be funny later, but when you're in the moment, you're too heated or whatever. But like, you know, like the dinner table scene from I Heart Huckabees when they go to Robert Jenkins' house, you know, and they're having dinner. And
Henry David Thoreau, Robinson Jeffers, the National Geographic Societies, was they're all socialists?
You're talking about socialism.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about not covering every square inch of populated America with houses and strip malls until you can't even remember what happens when you stand in a meadow at dusk.
What happens in the meadow at dusk?
Everything. Everything.
Nothing.
Everything. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. I work for an electrical engineering firm, son, and we do a lot of commercial and residential contracts. And if development stops, so does my paycheck. Then Stephen couldn't be here as our guest, could he? So your ideas hurt Stephen out.
I'm not hurting Stephen. That's an outrageous accusation.
Don't use that tone of voice in
Well,
my
I think you started that tone, sir, and I think it's entirely possible for your engineering firm to have jobs for people, preserve open spaces, have contracts, do the... Whoa.
What's he doing?
Why is he closing his eyes?
They just like insult him, and everybody ends up really pissed off. And, that scene's hilarious, but like it's so awkward that you don't even realize it's funny till you watch it for a second time.
Mark Wahlberg is just hilarious during his entire character is funny during the entire time, but it's almost like you're laughing at him because he's just so weird than it is just trying to be a funny joke. But it's just like he has this thing. It seems like he's obsessed with existentialism and almost like who did we talk about? That Gus Van Sant is very much about younger males trying to find their way in the world and in the universe and what does it all mean. And I think that really came to a head with I Heart Huckabees. And I think that was like David O. Russell's filmography is like a tale of two filmmakers to me, even though they all feel like they're made by the same person. But I feel like he was really trying to go for it with like crazy visuals, kind of like a Spike Jonze. And then once we got to The Fighter, he really is just like, okay, I'm just gonna kind of wash all that away and really focus on the human condition and put that on spotlight, and that's where I think he thrives the most. I mean, American Hustle, yes, super flashy, super in your face, everything's very cutty and very almost Guy Ritchie, but not, because Guy Ritchie is a terrible director, but
it's funny. I had the exact same thought. I'm like, if Guy Ritchie had any chops, he would have made American Hustle this way.
Totally.
Because Guy Ritchie, something you can say for him, like some of his movies are stupid, but Lock, Stock, and Snatch are quite good. And I think it's the freneticism. It's the kinetic energy that really propelled those movies. It's the Dutch angles and the fast talking and the whip pans and stuff like that. I think he added a lot more kinetic movement to the camera. He'll light a scene 360 degrees, so you never know where the camera's going to go. And he'll whip around people with the Steadicam. Once he figured the technology got to where he could move the camera a lot more, instead of doing a bunch of cuts, he does longer takes and moves the camera around. And, if you're looking for that, you see how much he started to do that in 2010, And I think that was just something he kind of figured out. But, like, it's so funny that you thought Guy Ritchie also.
Yeah, I was just like... And exactly what you said. I'm just like, man, if Guy Ritchie could still make films, because I agree with you. Although I will say that I think that Guy Ritchie made a great movie, and then he didn't know what to do, and then he made the same one twice. So I can't even really give him credit for Snatch, because it's the same film as Lock, Stock.
It's his second draft almost.
Yeah.
But
he's like, what?
Snatch is well. Do you know what the working title of Snatch was?
What?
Helter Skelter, but he decided not to go with that because that was, written on the wall in blood.
Frowned upon, sure.
Yeah, but he was like, hey, maybe don't bring that up.
Yeah.
And then Tarantino's like, we could bring that up.
But it's like, you mentioned actors, and you're either a David O. Russell guy or gal or not, and then it's just like, but you look at the ones that are, and someone like a Bradley Cooper who was very moldable by the experience of just being around someone that has unrelenting as a David O. Russell and uncompromising, he took that as inspiration, and that's great. And then of course, and then you have De Niro, who is just like, he went to his house with the Silver Linings Playbook script, and De Niro was just in tears because of personal experiences. The people that get it, and I'm not trying to talk crap about like Amy Adams or George Clooney or whatever, but it's just like, you see the people that get it and you see the people that don't, and you're just like, yeah, these people are just kind of there to show up and do some movies, or these people are really there for the love of the craft.
I mean, I don't think you make a value judgment about the actors at all. I think there are some people who can take being pushed really hard. Because it's the same thing. Like there are some coaches in the NHL that you hear about being tough but fair from the players that like them, and some people just demand a trade. You know?
Yeah.
He gets the best out of the people that can withstand the pressure, and some people don't like to be directed that way, and some people do like to be directed that way, and then some people are Lily Tomlin.
No! God damn it!
You know, who on any given day might break if pushed too hard. So who knows how much of that spin, but they both said they want to work together again.
Right.
So like, have you ever had an argument with a collaborator where like it just, you know, you cooled off later and you got good work done, but just, you know, you butted heads? I don't know.
Sure.
I think he's very tough, and I think some people like that and some people don't. Some people say life's too short to have a guy yell at me and make me feel like a piece of shit. And some people are like, he got me to another level as an actor, you know, by screaming at me or whatever he does.
Let's talk about some of the things that didn't work. Like Three Kings is something that I was watching and I'm like, man, this is definitely escalated, or this is definitely on a different level than most war films, and I see where he's going. He tried to make a war art film, but then like a lot of it just comes off as kind of amateurish, and then he kind of cleans it up later in his career. And that's the thing where you could really see, kind of like a Bigelow and some other filmmakers we talked about before, but you could really see a progression with him. And you could really see like he buys into his process, where a lot of people are very influenced by others, and you could see a lot of other influences kind of seeping in and bleeding in. But everything feels like a Russell film, but every O. Russell film feels better than the last. That not so much Joy. I think Joy was kind of a little bit of a misstep, but I'm not saying it's a bad film. I'm just saying that was definitely felt like a parody of a David O. Russell film to me.
Yeah. And it's funny, that same year he made Accidental Love as Stephen Green, because I think if he had it to do over, he would have made I Heart Huckabees as Stephen Green.
Yeah.
Because it felt like something he was doing for himself. He likes to go for it. Mm-hmm. I saw a really long interview that we're going to link in the show notes, like this 2-hour interview where he compared himself to like a general, that you have to go forward. You can't be afraid, you know, to attack. He uses a lot of imagery like that. And you just have to buy into your own process. You can't let the actors see you second guess yourself. You know, he said actors are like horses. You don't want them to get spooked. Which I thought was interesting. So I think
coming
Three
from
Kings,
him, right?
Yeah. Actors are like horses. You scream at them and call them the C word.
Yeah.
Three Kings was him going for it, because he had 2 movies under his belt. Spanking the Monkey, which was, you know, a fine cult film, and Flirting with Disaster, which was just like every movie that Ben Stiller made.
Yeah.
Ever. You know?
Definitely the most forgettable.
Who has the balls to make a movie like Three Kings? And at the time, I remember really liking it, and I feel like it mostly holds up because it was a war movie that wasn't John Wick. You know, it didn't glamorize it.
Yeah,
it was so cynical, and like I wasn't ready for that tone back in '99, but like now I really get what he was going for. Three Kings is the most cynical war film I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because it was like everybody else is participating in the war, and these 3 guys just checked out. They don't give a shit. They're like, you know, they were put in this situation as cannon fodder, you know, to protect the oil interests, you know, and keep the war machine going. But like, we have a chance to enrich ourselves. Let's go for it.
I like how he's just like, I'm going to make a war film about a war that's not really happening and make that interesting. And succeeding. And how do you do that? You add, you know,
Spike Jonze. You put Spike Jonze in an acting role.
Spike Jonze. He's great in that film.
Everybody was great in that film. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it holds up not from not like a traditional sense. It's like, oh, it's not like The Thin Red Line or anything. It's not like this work of art, but it's just so weird and so different as far as it's a genre breaker. And that's what I think, like Flirting a Disaster, or not Flirting with Disaster, but Spanking the Monkey. If you're trying to put that if you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole and call that a coming of age film, fuck, that's a genre breaker. Like, what are we watching? This is that movie just completely took myself and I'm sure a lot of people by storm. But that's how like unrelenting he is, and that's the word I keep using. But it's just like he's just like, I have a story to tell, and everyone be damned, this is how it's gonna be. I mean, I don't remember anything about that film coming out, and I don't even know if it got I'm sure it got a theatrical release, but I could only imagine people viewing that for the first time. Like, can you imagine like date night? Hey, let's go see the next coming of age comedy, and go taking your wife or your husband to go see Spanking the Monkey?
Now, can you imagine going with your mother?
Got it. God, that was good. Yeah. Oof.
Yeah, I know. It's and who has the balls, to make Spanking the Monkey as their first feature film? He's a guy who commits. He said he compared it to like mountain climbing. He's like, you're never gonna make any discoveries if you prevaricate. If you try to hedge and like go in the middle, you might make a film that's like okay being safe, but you're never going to discover anything. And I think he has made some discoveries about the process, about things you can do, risks you can take, things you can do with the camera, you name it, any part of the process, things you can do with music, things you can do with editing. I think he's just committed and he's trusted himself. He's like, this is a decision I've made. We're going to go for it. And he's made some discoveries that helped him along the way. And that's sort of his style. And when he makes some movies that are a little ambitious, like Three Kings, like Spanking the Monkey, and at the time, like The Fighter.
Yeah.
That's him committing. That's his style, and he just goes for it. And he doesn't spook the horses.
He absolutely, like I said, he believes in his own process so much that he even puts his own O. Russell extended universe Easter eggs in there. Like it wasn't a accident that the beginning of Three Kings opens up with a dragging, the feet dragging in the sand, and then you get to The Fighter and it's a rake. And he did that on purpose. He's just like, yeah, I wanted to make a little callback to Three Kings, so he has his own O. Russell extended universe, and it's great because no other, but little other filmmakers have this much confidence in their own craft and their own work. I mean, he's just so into the own work and making brave movies. Like Silver Linings Playbook for him was super personal. His own son. Basically, Bradley Cooper is portraying his own son, Matt, I think, or whatever his son's name is. He's on the spectrum. And one of my favorite scenes in an O. Russell film is the fight between when Bradley Cooper can't find the wedding video, and it's just so off the rails and crazy and waking up the neighbors, and just everyone just turns in this crazy performance, and then your face gets hot and you're just like, God, this is like the best movie I don't want to look at. And he's so good at capturing those uncomfortable feelings. Is it a perfect movie? I don't know. I think it's damn near close. Like if Huckabees is just like 100%, I mean, Silver Linings is probably got to be his close second.
You know what I love about De Niro? Like at this point in his career, he doesn't have to work, and he just loves sleeping in a trailer and eating craft services so much. He'll do any fucking movie, and he's not like, I'm Robert fucking De Niro, I was in Raging Bull, I demand to be the lead. He's like, yeah, I'll be in 2 scenes, I don't give a shit. Yeah. He'll play these supporting roles, and having De Niro as your supporting actor in a movie, Jesus.
That says a lot. He's not a Bruce Willis. Like, the world doesn't have to stop because Bruce Willis is on the fucking set. Like, who cares? But De Niro will show up and turn in these...
Or someone like Seagal, who would rather be the star of a shitty movie than like...
Or Nick Cage, yeah.
I'd rather be the star of a shitty movie than like a bit part in a good one. And De Niro's not like that. I love that they collaborate so much because, you know, he gets a great performance out of De Niro, who's, you know, barely in the movie, but what he is there for, it's amazing.
Isn't Joy a little bit like his Snatch, though? Like to his Lock, Stock, like Silver Linings?
Yeah, maybe.
I was just like, I was watching it, I'm like, God, this feels kind of like a weird Tim Burton film. And then I'm like, oh, God, this feels like Silver Linings. And I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way to where I was just like, I have so much, who am I? Who cares, right? But I was just like, I have so much like respect for him as a filmmaker to not go back to the well as much as he did in that film. And it's just like, I know that like Jennifer Lawrence has kind of been his muse in the later part of his career, but it's just like, don't force it. And I don't want him to force it. And that's, you know, I guess I'm kind of giving a little shade to him now, but it's...
Nah, he was trying to find some way for her to shine, and that's what happens.
Isabella Rossellini was cool to see.
Well, there was some movie he was trying to get made called Nailed around 2013, and it didn't end up happening. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why he made Joy and Accidental Love instead.
Yeah.
Because I think he wasted a lot of effort on a movie that did not get made ultimately.
Well, Nailed was Accidental Love. They changed the name.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah.
Okay. Nailed is a better...
through half of that? Whew, boy.
Nailed is a better title for that.
It really is. It really is. It's not a good film. By any...
he went for it, though. He wrote something weird, you know, and just made the movie. He wanted it to be funny on purpose, and he made a fucking PG-13 movie. Why would you do that? So,
and that's the difference. It's like we said, when he's trying, it kind of comes off like kind of a campy straight-to-video, where his humor, when it's just naturally people sitting at a dinner table just, you know, hey, I'm Johnny Sausage Peppers, you know, come sit and watch the Philly game with me. That's when it just... It's funny because it's authentic, because we've all been there before, not when he's trying to tell joke.
Yeah, well, I think he just wanted to make a different non-David O. Russell, which is why he didn't attach his name to it.
Yeah, he's like,
But if you look at the cast of that movie, the cast is insane for a piece of shit.
What, Jennifer Biel? I mean, Jessica
Biel, Beverly D'Angelo, James Marsden, Bill Hader, Kirstie Alley, Tracy Morgan, Jake Gyllenhaal. Yeah, the movie is insane. That cast is nuts. And he just lost all the money they gave him. When fuck you, David O. Russell.
I don't even know what he's working on. He's just doing...
He's working on a TV show right now. He's developing something.
Yeah. I don't want him to stop. And it doesn't seem like he wanted to stop either. Like it seemed like he was on a nice clip once he kind of came back with the fighter. The fighter kind of taught him... you know, you can do this, you kind of shake it off. That was his, like, you know, phoenix emerging from the flames, so to speak, or from the ashes. And then he was just, like, making movies. And then, I don't know, Joy happened, and he's just kind of been resting on his laurels a little bit. I know Jennifer Lawrence has been kind of busy being in a bunch of shitty X-Men movies, but I feel like he needs to get to a place where maybe a whole new set of cast would... revitalize him again. He's due for a third kind of rising.
She got killed in the trailer. I don't know how many days she put it on the set of that X-Men movie.
I just think it's funny that they hired the same writer for Dark Phoenix as they did for X-Men Last Stand, which is essentially Dark Phoenix.
I know.
They're going to get it right this time, right?
No, I haven't seen it, so I can't say that it's a piece of shit. But,
but it's probably a piece of shit.
The trailer looks so good. I'm like, everything in the trailer looks awesome.
Loved digging into this guy because he's just such a... Like a Richard Linklater, where he's just very boots on the ground, kind of... very tactile type of filmmaker, but just has this, but kind of the opposite too, where Linklater's just like, hey, you don't like my script, buddy? Why don't you just kind of say whatever you want, however you want to feel it, you know? Where he, you know, Russell's very much not. He is very particular. Someone even asked him in an interview, was just like, oh, that was a nice back and forth on Huckabees. Was all that was that improv? And he's like, no, everything was scripted. Everything was planned. And I totally believe that, because even if it feels authentic, he'll make you do it. He's like the modern day, Stanley Kubrick. He's yelling at shelling all over again to get the best possible take.
Oh, come on. What do you mean roll video? We're fucking killing ourselves out here, and you've got to be ready.
I am too. I'm standing
Should we
right
play
by
mood
the
music?
door. No, I can't.
Yeah, but when you
hear.
came out like this, you said just
We're sitting there because they say, wait a minute,
okay.
and then you say on the radio,
But when you
go.
do it, you've got to look desperate, Shelley. You're just wasting everybody's time now.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison. I kind of compare him to Soderbergh a little bit, just in the way he makes the kind of films he likes to make, and he'll occasionally do one for him. You know, Soderbergh. How many Accidental Loves did Soderbergh make? You know, so
quite a bit.
And you know, I don't think anybody understands Hollywood better than Steven Soderbergh.
Right.
You know, I think he kind of sees what's coming for cinema, and he's shooting movies on his iPhone, you know, for a couple $100,000, and I think people should pay attention.
Do you think that's why we're kind of on a cinematic break for a lot of these heavy hitters like David O. Russell, where it's just like Soderbergh was just so kind of like blah with the whole process, so he's just like, I got to challenge myself somehow?
Yeah. Well, I think with Netflix and home cinema and that kind of stuff, I think that's fundamentally changing what kind of movies need to get made via Hollywood.
Yeah.
That's why Soderbergh's like, I don't need their money, because they're going to want to spend $40 million advertising the movie. And then they're like, you got to make $100 million because we got to recoup that $40 million from advertising.
Sure.
Plus your budget. You know, all the budgets are so bloated that if the movie's a failure if it doesn't make $100 million, which is like, you need the big cinematic, you know, Endgame, you know, Avengers Endgame type movies in the theater, but like, I didn't necessarily need to see American Hustle in the theater. I would have been just fine seeing it on my rather large television at home. Everyone has a big TV now, you know? So like with Netflix and stuff like that, do you need to have a $40 million advertising budget for Joy and then like, this is a flop because it didn't make $100 million? So yeah, maybe that is why he's taking a break, because he hasn't really had a huge hit since American Hustle, which was 6 years ago now. So like, he's working on a television show because this is the golden age of television. So I'm really not surprised to see somebody that is as smart and deliberate as him sort of saying like, I don't want so much pressure on myself that if the movie doesn't make 9 figures, I'm a failure.
Yeah.
You know?
It seems like Hollywood or just cinema in general, the only kinds of movies right now that are making money in the theaters are your big spectacles, in which we just, you know, had the Endgame and all that, and they're still going to be crazy. I mean, Spider-Man's next week. It's just like, it's all over. No, here's another Spider-Man film. But
there's plenty of stuff. Like I saw Aladdin.
Yeah,
and Aladdin sucked, but it's gonna make its money back.
It made a ton of money, and that's the other one. Like big kid films, of course, you got to take your children somewhere, and then I think these kind of Oscar-y movies, which he's really good at. So I think that, you know, it's like a La La Land or a Whiplash or a Moonlight. I think. But
what about Roma? Roma cut the theater.
Yeah,
cut the theater right out. You know, and Cuarón's one of my favorite directors, man. He just said, fuck it. He just throw this up on Netflix. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if David O. Russell's next film doesn't end up direct to Hulu or Amazon or Netflix or something like that.
Sure.
I think that the landscape is changing. So the fact that he isn't trying to make another Joy right now shouldn't surprise you, because I think he would rather make a good TV show. I think the guy's got the chops. Can you imagine him making a TV show?
Man, yeah.
Yelling at somebody every week.
Yeah. You probably won't see Amy Adams or...
Life's too short to make 13 episodes for this asshole.
I think you said on the last episode where it's just like, you just cannot argue with the results, though. And it's just like, yeah, you know, humanely, you think about it, you shouldn't treat people in a certain way.
Well, he's the Greg House of directing, and I think people fell in love with that Greg House character, and now people are starting to come around and be like, "Man, no, don't be an asshole," you know?
Yeah,
even if you get the result, every person who is a asshole with no tact looked at House and be like, "Yeah, but if you're just good enough, you can be however you want." It's like, no, I think you really just have to not be a total prick all the time. You know, even if you're the best, even if you're, it's like, well, I'm a prick and everyone hates me, except they need my help. They have to come crawling to Dr. House to diagnose their shit. I think people have started to fall out of love with that kind of character a little bit. And I think he has realized that it's caused him some hardships in Hollywood. But as much as he doesn't want to compromise to other people, he can't compromise to himself either.
Yeah.
He just commits hard. And I think the fact that he's found people who want to work with him regularly and just like swear by his process, you just got to kind of find those people and you get the best out of them. And for whatever reason, he synergizes well with Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence, and he's found his people, and he's certainly found an audience.
I feel like those two specifically, though, have gotten to a certain point because of him, and now they're just like not too good to be in a Russell film by any means, but just like Bradley Cooper just seems like he's now, he just had a very successful directorial debut, so now he's probably going to be focusing on that. Jennifer Lawrence could do kind of anything she wants, where I really feel like he has to kind of find the new class of maybe like a young actress to bring up, or just someone else that feels the need to, I don't know. I feel like the right type of person young in their career, whether they're age-wise or not, can really benefit from an experience like this. Because he is just so open and so willing to share his process with them. Where, like I said before, Bradley Cooper's just like, this is how I made such a well-received film, because I learned preparation and work ethic from this man. And
right. It's just he's burned enough bridges that like he just once the people who swear by him have learned all they can from him.
Amy Adams like, fuck it, I'll just make another Nicholas Sparks film. Like, who needs this?
I want to kind of maybe talk a little bit about what he does visually. I think that's unique. Yeah. I think Three Kings, for being his third movie, was very like the weird practical effects, like the bullets ripping through people and stuff like that, and the lung inflating. Those kind of weird that he used practical effects for that sort of shot.
Yeah,
I thought that was really interesting, and like visually, I like the stuff he did on the screen in I Heart Huckabees with the parts of the people mixing and stuff like that, and all the weird visual asides. Yeah, all this stuff. I liked, and once he abandoned that kind of stuff, I felt like his films did better commercially, but like I would like to see a return to some of that kind of stuff, because like I like the risks he was taking with those sort of visuals, and now I think he has felt like he's refined his process, and what he likes to do is prime people to feel a certain way where they don't really know they're being primed. It's not a big, obvious on-screen visual, but it's a combination of a camera whipping around, the music he uses, and, how he frames the scene. I think he may have gotten so good that he doesn't need to rely on gimmicks like that. I would like to see another movie visually that's like I Heart Huckabees, but I would understand if he never makes something like that again.
Yeah, I feel like he was testing the electric fences, especially with like Three Kings. Like the whole lung scene, it just made me think of SLC Punk, where the acid is getting absorbed into Devon Sawa's leg.
Yeah,
I was just like, man, it feels kind of film schooly. But I enjoy that he went for it. I just feel like I would love to see him do more of a Wes Anderson like movie, like I Heart Huckabees, certainly. But the thing that made those still work, because if Three Kings was just those wacky visuals alone, it wouldn't have worked. It's his impeccable writing is just what elevates these mundane plot lines. All of his films are just on paper. This is a story about...
With the exception of Three Kings, there's a lot of mundanity in his movies, for sure.
And that's...
Well, maybe American Hustle was kind of crazy, too. It was like, here's these crazy larger-than-life people doing this insane grift. But, like, yeah, Silver Linings Playbook, you know, Joy is about sort of a larger-than-life character, but she's like, I got a business empire. That's sort of boring. You know, there's... the fighter's like, I'm a boxer. My brother's a boxer. He knocked the guy down, but I'm a boxer. Yeah. So, like, I don't know. Like, you're right. There's a lot of mundanity, and I think he tries to find the truth behind that stuff and make it relatable, and I think that's why it resonates.
Yeah. But yeah, again, like I said, I'm totally on board with him pushing himself again now with all the experience he's garnered throughout his career, to see him kind of test the electric fence again. As long as, like I said, as long as the writing's there, as long as he has the right aces in their places, so to speak, then, you know, go for it. Go be madcap. I mean, if I could get anything close to another I Heart Huckabees, I could die happy, you know.
I never understand, other than like it got punished at the box office and no one's going to give him the money to make another movie like that. Just the writing was so good. I realize that movie's polarizing and I just like it because I'm a giant film nerd or whatever, but like I would love to see something more like that because he clearly has ideas like that. If his brain made that movie, his brain could make more movies like that.
Yeah.
And if Netflix or somebody like that wants to give him a smaller budget because they don't have to advertise, that could be a thing we could get. I would really like that, because as much as like, yeah, The Fighter and Silver Linings Playbook and American Hustle were good, successful movies, but they were Oscar bait.
Yes, absolutely.
And I Heart Huckabees was daring and polarizing, and I wish he would make a movie for me again like he used to.
Yeah,
that's all I want. I want him to make a movie for me.
Even like Spanking the Monkey or Three Kings. Those are these daring O. Russell films that are just like, it's like barbed wire on your eyeballs, but you're just like, God, once you turn it off, you're like, what the fuck did I just watch? But it was just so good. It's like, yeah, I Heart Huckabees is almost like going a week. Watching that movie is as good as going to a year of film school. It's just, that's the trifecta. That is everything. It's writing, it's directing, it's casting. Everything kind of fell in its place. And, you know, we say that because we see the end product, but then you see the behind the scenes and it was anything but. But that was, you know, but that could be, the same thing could be said for The Shining. The Shining is a masterpiece, although it was an absolute train wreck behind the scenes. And I realized that he can't really do that anymore, and people are even kind of wise to that. And he had a quote when he was talking to a panel of other filmmakers where he's just like, I'm not a political or tactful person, so he doesn't go behind himself to try to make amends, and then things kind of take on a life of their own. Because he just reacts because that's his vision. That's, to him, it makes sense. And if you're not on the fucking train, get off. And if you, I don't know, that's inspiring, but I'm glad that he's not yelling at me.
Yeah, but that quote, like, is kind of like, oh man, that's so cool. He doesn't compromise, but at the same time, it's like, dude, just go fucking apologize. And it's clearly apologized to Lily Tomlin.
Yeah.
Because she didn't say life's too short to work with him again, and she hasn't worked with him again. But at the same time, she's like, I'd love to work with him again.
Yeah. Same time,
because at the end of the day, she was so fucking good in that movie.
Yeah.
And she was fine in Flirting with Disaster, which was like just a whatever kind of movie, you know. Yeah. But she was good in that. But like, she was so good in Huckabees that she has to like look at that movie and be like, fuck, that was such a pain in the ass to make, but look what we made.
Yeah.
And I realize that like most of the people watching this probably didn't care for that movie, but shit, I sure did.
I don't know. I think if anyone's clicking on a David O. Russell podcast, they're like, yeah, I've seen I Heart Huckabees. I feel like that's his standout, right? I mean, maybe Silver Linings is kind of eclipsed that now for more current moviegoers. But I mean, that to me is his magnum opus. I think that's his being John Malkovich. I mean, it doesn't get better than that.
And it's sort of like he got spanked a little bit making that movie. He lost so much money that he's sort of like, all right, maybe I don't make a movie for David O. Russell. Maybe I make a movie for America. And I think he did that 3 times in a row. He had 3 massive mega hits.
Yeah.
Right in a row. And I think he just, and then he made Joy. But I think he made Joy so those 3 would have something to do. It's like, do you want to hang out and eat craft services with Robert De Niro again? He's like, yeah.
He literally plays the exact same role in that film. I'm just like, what? It's this grumpy, elderly De Niro dad. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of all I have to say about O. Russell. I mean, he's a brilliant filmmaker, and I hope he makes more. I mean, he really... You look at a lot of the filmmakers that we talk about, they have gigantic lists of in years and years. He's got, what, 9, 11?
8 movies anybody saw.
8 movies.
Because no one saw Accidental Love, or they don't really associate it with him, so it's really like 8.
And it's like concentrated juice in the can. Like, everything is just potent and riveting and different. Like, it's so different. Like, because a lot of people get like, if you're like I'm a Wes Anderson type or a Spike Lee, like these visual, you get grouped in these like visual directors, right? And a Russell could kind of float in between. Like, he's got the visual stuff, although he's kind of gone away from it recently.
He didn't get pigeonholed in doing that 3 Kings shit, right? Like, he didn't, for whatever reason, he could just kind of divorce himself for that. Because 2 movies in a row, he really did that kind of stuff. And then in post, and then he's like, I think I'm just going to make more acceptable, palatable movies. But that's fine. You know, I don't think Wes Anderson could make a non-Wes Anderson movie.
And that's fine, though. That's his wheelhouse.
Well, I don't want him to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some choices that he could have made along the way to, I think, make his ride as a filmmaker a little bit less tumultuous, but goddamn,
could he have? Because I think he would consider that a compromise, and I don't think he knows how.
That's fair.
You know, because he doesn't compromise his artistic style. He doesn't make a movie he doesn't want to make. He doesn't half-ass a movie he does want to make and let the studio fuck with it too much. He would rather not make a movie for 6 years.
And if he does, he says he puts Stephen Green on it.
Yeah. So I really think, like, love him or hate him, he's very polarizing, like my favorite movie of his. And maybe that's not the way to be. Maybe you don't be David O. Russell. But at the same time, how do you argue with the results?
Yep. Yeah. Thanks for coming, everyone. Thanks for breaking in this new luscious movie theater. We moved uptown, so to speak. I don't know. But yeah, when we're not here talking movies to the audience, where can everyone find you, Jason?
I'm on Twitter at JasonEAlt, and if you find my Twitter profile, I have a pinned post at the top of that says all the stuff I do. I have some Magic Gathering projects. I'm on a podcast about that. I write some articles. I'm a content manager of a website. I'm very busy in that community, and I'm really glad that some of the people from there have come over to watch me do this, because this is something I'm really passionate about, and I appreciate everyone watching. And hey, if you found us through like love of movies, you're like, oh shit, these guys are into magic. Well, yeah, we super are. So check out our other projects if you are so inclined. Thank you for watching.
Absolutely. And not only did the audience come over from the magic community, but a lot of the co-hosts or guests rather have. We've had like Ristic Studies, and again, someone else that's pretty prominent in magic and movies, Ben Bateman. You know him from Action Army and the Schmodown and all that good stuff. He will be joining us on our next episode of Director's Cut, talking about Tony Scott. So get your aviators ready, because
you're going into the danger zone.
Yeah,
we're going to talk about Top Gun, 5 Denzel movies, and then some other stuff.
Should I just eat like grilled cheese during the entire episode? I don't know.
Hey, watch it, John. Your ego's writing checks that your body can't cash, and that makes you
This
dangerous.
body's cashed a lot of grilled cheeses, obviously. You can find me right here on this very channel. They Said, We Said. Thank you so much for joining us. If you want to listen to this in podcast form, you can do so on iHeartRadio now. Whoa, Spotify.
iHeart Huckabee's Radio.
iHeart Huckabee's Radio. Leave us a, what is it? Not a thumbs up. What did they do on iTunes? Rate us?
Give us a 5 eyes. It's probably 5 apples.
Okay.
Maybe on iTunes, right? Because it's Apple, so it's like give us 5 apples.
Sure.
Like the 5 apples that Steve Jobs ate instead of getting chemotherapy. What, too soon?
I'm so, man, you're activating my pneumonia.
Go to a doctor.
I know, right?
Don't just eat fruit, idiot. If you got pneumonia, go to a hospital.
Yeah, it turned out well. No, it really didn't. Yeah, we'll see you at the movies. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye-bye.